I've been getting a lot of really nice comments on some of my older video series. I'm speaking specifically about the Stacking Mexican Silver video series. It's a 5 or 6 volume series that I released probably not even a year ago. But it seems to be kind of a perennial favorite. People are watching it consistently. It's constantly getting views, and people leave really, really nice comments. It's really nice to see those. But a couple weeks ago, I got an email from one of my subscribers named Rob. And Rob thanked me for my content, in particular the Mexican series. And he said that he's kind of reawakened his enjoyment for collecting coins that he had when he was a kid, and he's also able to share that excitement with his own kids. I think that's a fantastic thing, kind of a multi-generational approach to coin collecting and precious metal stacking. Fantastic. Glad to hear it. And I really appreciate that email, Rob. That was really nice. But it kind of got me thinking. You know, I've done Stacking Mexican Silver, where I've talked about Spanish colonial silver all the way through modern Mexican 21st century silver pieces. And I've touched on 20th century Mexican gold a couple of times. The Rookie Gold Buyers series talks about some of the smaller denomination 2.5 peso gold coins, that kind of thing. And I've done a few shorts recently where I've talked about those gold coins of Mexico as well, the 20th century pieces, and how they work kind of well as a fractional system of buying gold: 2.5 peso, 5 peso, 10 peso, 20 peso, and the monster 50 peso. But that got me thinking that I've never really talked very much about 19th century Mexican gold, and specifically the 8 Escudo. That's kind of the big Mexican gold coin. So let's do a video on the 8 Escudos, the Escudos of Spanish colonial, New Spain, and also those 8 Escudo pieces as they responded to, or they were placed within, the Republic of Mexico. So that's what this video is going to be about. We're going to talk about the 19th century 8 Escudos. If you are new to the channel, my name is White Cross. You can call me White, you can call me Dub C. I answer to pretty much anything. And if you are new to the channel, I'd love to have you become one of our subscribers. Love to have you be part of this community. If you are already one of my subscribers, thank you guys, as always, for being with me here again today. It means a lot. If you are new to the channel, I like to begin my videos with a simple disclaimer, and that disclaimer is that I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And I also like to begin my videos with a couple of concepts that we can work back into the subject matter. Again, we're talking about the 8 Escudo, kind of the big gold coin of 19th century Mexico here. So 2 concepts, they're both pretty easy to understand. The first one is the word escudo, and you'll take a look at it here. Escudo is probably a Latin word. It's actually Latin is scutum, and both Portuguese and Spanish are Romance languages, find their roots in the Latin language. And it means shield. So scutum, Latin for shield, escudo, Portuguese and Spanish for shield as well. And there's a reason for that. These pieces often had a shield on them, kind of a symbol of authority, a symbol of power, obviously a symbol of the country from which they were issued. Think of it kind of along the lines of as a crown. Remember, we've talked about silver crowns often on this channel. Often had the monarch on the front of the coin, often wearing a crown, so you knew that this was the person in charge. I think the word escudo kind of works hand in hand with that. It's the symbol of royal authority or governing authority. Shield, escudo, that's what it means. And the second term is one that I've mentioned briefly a couple of times in earlier videos, and that is the term sleeper. Sleeper really means a coin or a coin series whose pricing, whose values seem to be far below what you would think that they should be based on their scarcity, their mintage, their age, that kind of thing. Modern sleepers, 20th century sleepers, we often referred to the Franklin half dollars as being sleepers. They were kind of scarce sometimes, especially in high grade with a full bell lines or in proof with deep cameos. And their prices for a long time never really seemed to reflect that. It seems like they finally caught up in the early 2000s. Kind of the same deal with Eisenhower dollars. Compared to earlier dollar series, There were certain Eisenhower dollars that had very, very low mintages, but they just never really seemed to excite collectors the same way. I think obviously a lot of that had to do with the fact that Eisenhowers weren't really silver dollars other than those 40% silver Ikes. So examples of sleepers. And we'll talk about sleepers again a little bit later in this video. So Escudo just means shield. It's the type of gold coins that were issued from Portugal, from Spain, and from other countries over kind of a long period of time. They went back and forth using the term Escudo. But for our sake, for our purposes here today, it is just the gold coinage of colonial Spain, of New Spain, and of the Mexican republics. And then the word sleeper, just a coin series that never really seems to have gotten the respect that it probably should have based on its scarcity. Two different concepts. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the Escudos and focusing again a little bit on the Mexican Republic, that is Mexico after it gained its independence from Spain. We'll talk about kind of the ratio of gold to silver for these coins. We're going to take a look at the 8 Escudo versus the 8 reale, and you'll see how those kind of work hand in hand with each other. I'll talk a little bit about the specifics of the 8 Escudo in terms of its gold content, and we'll compare that with the $20 gold pieces from the United States of America from about the same period of time, kind of compare and contrast. And then we'll end with a little bit of kind of some suggestions. If you feel like these might be pieces that you want to stack, I will give you some suggestions. I'll point you in certain directions. I give you some additional information and tips that I have found helpful for my own stack over the years. And we'll see what you think about that towards the end of the video. So Escudos, the 8 Escudo. Escudos were issued in sizes from 1/2 Escudo all the way through 8 Escudos. And I think that there are instances of some Central and South American countries that actually issued even smaller increments than a 1/2 Escudo. That's a very, very small coin. But probably the most easily recognized version of the Escudo is the 2 Escudo. That had a nickname. Show of hands if you know what that nickname was. Right, in this case, a 2 Escudo gave its name double to a doubloon. A gold doubloon is a 2 Escudo. 2 double Escudo. So the doubloon was kind of a standard gold coin, relatively small gold coin of kind of what we think of as being the pirate era of colonial gold and silver. The golden age of piracy, the scholars and experts in the field tell us, really ended around 1718. I think that was when Blackbeard was eventually found and killed. But so really Spanish treasure, pirate treasure, the age of buccaneers was really probably from the late 1500s all the way through the 1600s and barely really touched the 1700s. But I'm going to show you some examples a little bit later that, if they aren't true pirate treasure, maybe at least kind of fire up that imagination for you. And I think you'll find that in some of these pieces as well. The exchange, I talked a little bit about that. The ratio of gold to silver is a little bit difficult for me to wrap my head around. And I think that's because Spain worked on a base 8 system, probably really technically a base 64 system. We in the United States work on a base 10 system with our coinage. In fact, almost every country in the world does that now, after we had something called decimalization that kind of showed its head in the early 1900s. And that is, we have 10 cents per dime. We have 10 dimes per dollar. You can see how we work on those tens. That's a base 10 system. Spain really worked on the base 8 system. So there were 8 Escudos in a large gold coin. There were 8 reales in a large silver coin. So we can see kind of the compare and contrast. But in order for me to kind of keep these straight in my mind, I like to use the United States comparison. Now, if you are one of my overseas viewers, overseas subscribers, I'm based in the United States, love having you along with us. But for me, in order to keep these kind of straight in my mind, I think of the American gold dollar. If you've never seen one of these before, this is a United States gold dollar, the smallest gold dollar or gold coin that the United States government really ever issued. These are quite small. This is an 1851 from Philadelphia. You can see it is very similar in style. That's because I believe that's the Longacre design of our $20 gold piece. These were a very tiny coin. But when you compare this amount of gold to an American silver dollar from roughly the same period of time, that's kind of the difference between an escudo and a reale to me. This is a gold dollar here on the left. This is a silver dollar on the right. So you can kind of compare and contrast about how much gold it took to equal a silver dollar. And I think of that kind of the same way with the escudos. Escudo by itself, a very small coin, and one escudo, equal essentially to an 8 reale. And this is an example of a Mexican Republic 8 reale. And then we've got some classic examples of the Spanish colonial New Spain 8 reales. So that's kind of the way I see them. One escudo equals essentially 8 reales. It's not really an exact appropriate ratio. It kind of depends where you were in the world. Spanish colonial had different derivations of their coinage than true Spanish, and actually in Spain would have used. They would have used almost a different currency system. The American colonies all accepted Spanish silver and Spanish gold. They loved it. And they valued it differently, I think, than the Spanish colonies themselves did. So there were actually different ratios being used, but in order to kind of keep it straight in my head, that's how I compare the two: gold dollar to silver dollar, escudo to reale. That's kind of the way that I see them working. So an 8 escudo to an 8 reale. We've talked about 8 reales a lot, and that is a fun coin to collect. I know that I've shown several of these before. This is a fantastic crown from Spain. This is something that was probably minted in Mexico City. We can see it from the mint mark. At least I think that was the Mexico City mint mark. It is indeed. So you've got, let me just correct myself here. Nope, that's right. This is an 8 reale from New Spain, from when Spain was ruling over the Spanish colonies. But just as Spain had released a silver 8 reale and a gold 8 escudo, the Mexican Republic, when they gained their freedom from Spain, released an 8 reale silver coin and an 8 escudo gold coin. So they kept that same system going. It's not really surprising. This is something that had been used in this area for literally hundreds of years by the time that Mexico gained its independence. But I think that they are a really beautiful way to complement each other. So we're going to focus a little bit more on the Mexican Republic pieces, and this is the Mexican Republic 8 escudo, and this is the Mexican Republic 8 reale. So escudo gold here on the left, reale silver here on the right. Aren't those beautiful? Isn't that just a gorgeous way to see both gold and silver in the same way? A fun way to stack if you've got the ability to stack a larger gold coin. And believe me, I know that not everybody has this kind of money in their budget right now. Maybe eventually, if you don't, you will work your way into it. And I think that's a wonderful goal. The 8 reale and the 8 escudos compared to each other. Mexican independence in the 1820s, so they started making these in 1824, I believe technically, when they started making the Mexican Republic 8 escudo. And they continued through all the way up until the 1870s, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. How about some specifics? How about kind of how much gold is in one of these 8 escudos? So the 8 escudo, even the ones that were made from New Spain, that were made when Spain was in control of this area, very similar in nature. The size, the weight, the purity, very, very similar. In fact, depending on what source you're using, they come out being almost identical. So 875 millesimal fineness, that means 87.5% pure, and the percentage, you have to forgive me, I keep on tilting the coin. I'm using new exciting Hollywood lighting here to see if that gives us a little bit better of an image. So 87.5% fine, 27.07 grams, which means the actual gold weight, and that's what we're always concerned about, 0.7615 of a troy ounce. It's a little bit of an obscure amount, so in my mind, again, to keep it simple, 0.76015, really close to 0.75, that would be 3/4 of a troy ounce. Easy enough, right? A little bit, very little bit more than 3/4 of a troy ounce. The design, if you were looking at it here, and this is kind of a neat design, I think it's a little bit devoid of iconography. These are great big fields that you see here. And this would really technically probably be the back of the coin, the reverse of the coin. For most Mexican series, this is considered the front of the coin with this symbol of the state symbol of Mexico on it. But for some reason, NGC put it into the holder like this, so we'll call this the obverse for now. What you see there, and that's the picture of a hand that is writing in the book of law. You can see the one word that's really clear there up at the top here is L-E-Y. We've talked about the word lay before as it relates to gold to silver coins. And that word, when we see it on a silver coin, kind of means by law, or that it's required to be this certain purity. In this coin, this case, I think it's being more allegorical. I think this is like the hand of justice writing in the book of law. And you see the quill here that the whole hand is holding. And unfortunately, a lot of these are very weakly struck. Let me see if I get... No, they're really about the same. A lot of these pieces quite weakly struck. The hand is holding a quill, a pin here, and on that pin is resting a Phrygian cap. We've talked about Phrygian caps a lot in the stacking Mexican silver videos. That's an example of a Phrygian cap there too. I know we've got a better example of that. Let's see if we can find one. That's maybe a little bit better. At least you can say the word there, libertad or libertas. So the Phrygian cap, another symbol of freedom. Freed slaves wore a Phrygian cap to identify themselves. This is Mexico expressing its independence from Spain. The Phrygian cap on that coin with the hand of freedom writing in the book of law. I think it's really kind of beautiful allegory, but I also just think that obverse, if you will, is just a really, really pretty design. That eagle design that we see in the 8 reales from the Mexican Republic, just a really cool design. This is just a neat, great big solid gold coin. So how does it compare? We talked about the fact that the 8 Escudo 0.7615 of a troy ounce, or 3/4 of a troy ounce. A $20 gold Liberty, we're talking specifically about the Liberties, not so much the St. Gaudens, because the Liberties were really from the same period of time. In fact, the $20 gold Liberty first issued in 1850. Now, technically, we have one example of an 1849 that was a pattern. What happened in 1849 in the United States of America that deals with gold? The gold rush, right? So it was after the gold rush that we realized that we needed to start coining much, much larger gold coins. That's really where the $20 Liberty came in. So from 1850 until 1907, when the St. Gaudens took over, that was when the gold Liberty double eagle was released. They are 900 fine, or 90% pure. Compare that to the Escudo at 87.5. It's pretty close. But the $20 gold Liberty actually weighs substantially more. They are 33.44 grams, or 0.9675. That's the actual gold weight. So 0.9675 of a troy ounce. Again, the 8 Escudos at about 3/4 of a troy ounce versus the United States $20 gold piece at just about a full troy ounce. The difference just shy of 25%. So while we had an apples-to-apples comparison in a lot of ways with the 8 Escudo versus the $20 gold piece. They were both issued in the middle of the 19th century. For the 8 Escudos, 1824 to 1874, roughly, about a 50-year period of time. The $20 gold Liberties issued from 1849 or 1850 all the way up until 1907, again, right about 50 years. The largest circulating gold coin of these two countries that were neighbors with each other in North America. Remember, Mexico is part of North America also. But the apples-to-apples comparison starts to break down a little bit when you get to the quantity of gold contained within the two pieces. Again, the Escudo, about 75% of a troy ounce. The $20 gold piece, right about a troy ounce. We'll talk about one other major difference here in just a moment. So I think that there are some interesting possibilities with Escudos. Why would you want to collect these 8 Escudos? Well, if you like American gold coins, pre-33 gold coins, if you like the $20 Liberties, there's nothing wrong with it. Obviously, I have a strong like for these pieces too. I also like the $20 St. Gaudens piece. Pretty much any 1933 gold coin, pre-33 gold coin is A-okay in my book. In fact, I like just about every gold coin. I think you probably do too. But there are some interesting aspects to the 8 Escudos that I think are easy to overlook. So let me just talk about a few of those really quickly. Surviving examples of the 8 Escudos are probably a lot fewer than most people would really expect, right? If these are apples to apples pieces, and we think about them being the larger gold workhorse of these two countries that are right next to each other, NGC's population of $20 liberties, now I'm just talking about the liberties, not the St. Gaudens, the liberties from 1850 until 1907, right about 800,000. That's how many examples of the $20 liberties NGC alone has graded. Now that's across all mint marks, all grades, but it's just north of 800,000. Obviously, not everything has been submitted to NGC. Not everything has been, graded at all. But that is a substantial number, 800,000, far more than I would have expected. And I don't know what I would have expected, but it doesn't seem like it would have been that high. How about the number of 8 Escudos? According to NGC's most recent census and population reports, according to their census, if I'm understanding this correctly, because this almost seems too small, fewer than 2,000 pieces. 800,000 versus 2,000. So you can see the number of graded pieces, slabbed pieces by NGC at least, is just a tiny drop in the bucket compared to those $20 gold pieces. Now, again, not every foreign country, I'm based in the United States of America, so we see Mexico as being a different country. Not every foreign country grades their coins with American third-party graders. I think it's definitely becoming more prevalent. You'll see a lot more foreign coins in NGC and PCGS plastic holders. And it's possible that the people that have large quantities of these 8 Escudo pieces have just never had them graded by NGC. But NGC's been around for over 30 years now, so I think that they would probably have at least a significant number, a number larger than this number. This number just seems shockingly small, and PCGS's numbers kind of echo these same terms. So they are much more scarce in terms of pieces that have been graded. That's kind of an interesting thing, I think. They also have prices that can be significantly lower than the $20 gold pieces. Now, they weigh less, right? And the purity is slightly less too. So you would expect that they would be a little bit less expensive than a $20 gold piece. But a nice slabbed example of a mid-century Mexican Republic 8 Escudo piece tends to be quite low. In fact, in some instances, I've seen cases where the premiums on these slabbed pieces from the middle of the 19th century are less than you would get on, a modern gold eagle. The premiums, not talking about the difference in price, just the premiums themselves. A couple of $100 over the value of the gold contained within. That seems like a pretty good bargain to me. Oh, what else do we have? There are some areas of history that, unfortunately, because America didn't really start getting into its biggest gold rush. Obviously, we had other gold rushes before the California gold rush. But without that large gold coin any earlier than 1849, or really technically 1850, you might be a fan of history that is unsupported by a $20 gold piece, because America just didn't have them at this point. We didn't have a great big gold coin from before 1850, really, that you could kind of match with any kind of historical event that happened before that period of time. Not so the 8 Escudos. One of the things that kept on occurring to me, obviously, is the how close Mexico is to Texas. And for my Texas subscribers out there, you're probably big fans of the Texas Republic. And I'm thinking, if the Texas Republic, the Republic of Texas, was born in 1836, lasted roughly until 1846, we wouldn't have a big American gold coin that kind of represents that era. But there are many 8 Escudo pieces from the same period of time. In fact, here's an example of one that I found while I was doing some research before shooting this video. And the premiums on this are actually quite small. Now, this piece, I believe, was struck in Guanajuato or one of the neighboring mints. It's not really close to the Mexican-Texas border, but it's a lot closer than it is to Philadelphia, for example. A lot of these pieces being struck in Philadelphia. That's 1,700 miles away from Texas, from San Antonio. Whereas a place like the Mexican border, you're talking 300 or 400 miles away from a big part of Texas. So when you're thinking about something that was kind of historical within America's boundaries and America's, our borders have changed many times over the years. This is an opportunity to get a gold piece from this period of time that maybe there isn't a corresponding American gold piece. I think that's really kind of an interesting thing too. If you are like getting wrapped up in the romance of the history of coins, you're thinking about those cowboys riding the range somewhere in the American Southwest, not even necessarily in Texas, but they're heading into that saloon and they're gambling and they're drinking some whiskey. Are they going to be using a Philadelphia struck $20 gold piece, or are they going to be using an Escudo that was struck just over the border somewhere? I think you can make the case that this was really kind of part of that American frontier, the American Southwest and West. I think these are really kind of interesting romantic pieces, and I think that adds a little bit to it. So those are some of the reasons why I think that they're fascinating and that they've got some potential. I mentioned that word sleeper at the beginning of this video, and I think that really kind of applies to a lot of these Escudos. If you can find these pieces that are from these earlier eras, that are graded by NGC or PCGS or even CACG, and you can get them for a very low premium. A lot of these pieces have incredibly small numbers that have been encapsulated. I used this example earlier. This is my 1849 example from Guanajuato. Now, if I'm reading the population ports correctly, there are about 20 graded examples from 1849 from this particular mint. Actually, I think that's across all the different mint marks that were used in 1849. So 20 examples, 20 or 30 examples out there. That is an incredibly small number of pieces, right? This is the only AU50, I think. Now, AU50 is not an especially high grade. You can find other examples that are graded higher than that. But I'm perfectly fine with an AU50 grade on an 1849 gold coin. Imagine if that was an American gold coin from this period of time. And the nice thing about this piece is that I didn't pay a really high premium for it. I'll touch on that again a little bit later. So my suggestions, if you're thinking about this, if you think that maybe these 8 Escudo pieces might fit into your stacking, and remember, this is really crossing that bridge from stacking to collecting. This is not really something that I would necessarily recommend as just a pure gold vehicle, but if you like something with a little bit of history, something with a little bit of potential, because I do think these are kind of sleepers, and you appreciate the fact that this is really an interesting part of our North American heritage, I think these offer some really interesting possibilities. What I would suggest, look for graded examples only. There are quite a few examples that I've seen out there, and these are raw pieces. These are not graded. This is a graded example. There are quite a few pieces out there that have been harshly cleaned. And you might expect that. Gold is a very soft metal, so a piece that was born in Mexico in the 1840s or 1850s has survived 175 years or more. You would expect that maybe it's got some bumps and bruises. But if I were being a discerning buyer, I would look for pieces that really haven't been harshly cleaned. If you're going to find a piece that has been graded by NGC or PCGS or CACG, don't get a details graded piece. I think that you can find inexpensive details graded pieces. That is a piece that is so damaged in one way or another that third-party graders don't feel comfortable giving it a numeric grade. They instead give it a grade based on the surviving details of the coin. Lots of pieces that were used in belt buckles, some pieces that were used in brooches, even put on necklaces. They have solder marks on them. They have really strange wear. I wouldn't go for that kind of thing. If you're looking at an inexpensive way to buy gold, and you can find those pieces pretty inexpensively, I think that there are better vehicles. I think I'd rather see you get into something that's like almost a modern bullion piece rather than one of these pieces that has been, damaged. That said, I would look for pieces that are graded by NGC or PCGS or CACG. Avoid cleaned and ex-jewelry pieces. Go for the Spanish colonial pieces. Now, the populations may be a little bit better for some of the Mexican Republic pieces, or it may actually even be better for some of the Spanish colonial pieces, those pieces from New Spain. Now, again, Spain made these all over Central and South America and even in Mexico. So you can find pieces that are minted in lots of different places. But those pieces from the 1700s in particular that really look very similar to the silver 8 reales, those 8 escudos that feature King Charles IV or his predecessors on them, can often be found for about the same price as the Mexican Republic 8 escudos. And in my mind, I think I'd rather have something that's a little bit older. That's a personal preference. If you'd rather have the Mexican Republic pieces, that makes perfect sense. If you look at the population reports and you find a Mexican Republic piece that has a very small number of pieces that have been graded versus a Spanish Republic or a Spanish colonial pieces that have lots of pieces that have been graded, you might want to, make up your mind based on the number of pieces that have been graded. But in my mind, at least, having a really cool piece from the 1700s just adds a little bit of extra interest. Again, sparks that feeling of almost buccaneer pirate treasure. And I think that that's a valid thing to keep yourself interested in what you're doing here. I have had a couple of early 1700s, mid 1700s pieces that have slipped through my fingers. And now making this video, I'm kicking myself. I wish that I still had those pieces. Glad that I've got these pieces though. Auctions can be your friend here. Now, always check with your local dealer. I'm a huge fan of buying locally. Check with your local dealer, especially if you don't live in a big municipality and there's not a huge collector base of these 8 Escudo pieces. And that may technically be why the demand for these is so low, the premiums for these are so low. That's always a good piece of advice. Look at your exit strategy. If you think you're going to buy these and the price is suddenly going to zoom to the moon, that may not be the case. Remember, these are sleepers for a reason. There's really just not a huge collector base, but maybe there will be. In any event, check with your local dealer, see if they've got some of these pieces. They may have a hard time selling these because the collector base is quite small. So they may be willing to offer them to you at not much of a premium over the value of the gold contained within. I think that's a great piece of advice. Always check your local dealer first. Let them know what you're after. But also check with auctions. So this piece actually came from Heritage, and I've mentioned Heritage many times before on this channel. Heritage tends to have kind of themed auctions. The same is true of Stax Bowers and lots of the other auction companies that are out there. So this piece came in an auction that had somewhere around 50 or 100 similarly slabbed pieces, these 8 Escudos, both from the Mexican Republic and also Spanish colonial pieces. But there were so many pieces that people tend to seek out those higher graded examples and tended to ignore the lower graded examples. So for this piece, even though it's an AU50, I didn't pay a very high premium over the value of the gold for it because everybody was clamoring to get the really high graded pieces. For me, AU50, perfectly fine for a coin of this age, gold coin of this age. So that's my advice. Remember, those auction buyers' premiums can be quite high. I think right now Heritage is running 20 or 25% on top of your winning high bid. So be careful of that. Always include that in your estimates for your bids when you're making bids. But if you find one of these themed auctions where there are lots of different examples of these pieces, select a piece that really appeals to you. Don't be afraid of going for a slightly lower graded piece. I think a very fine, extremely fine, about uncirculated, those pieces are fine, to me at least. I wouldn't have a problem having those in my stack, and these pieces probably in that range as well. So auctions can be your friends. Look for those auctions that have lots of multiple examples of these. And maybe if you don't have deep pockets, go for a piece that's maybe a little bit lower grade. As long as you're getting a nice graded examples that's not in the details grade, I think you're probably going to do just fine. So one last thing that I thought was kind of neat, and I'll just point it out here. Again, I'm working with new lighting here, so please bear with me. You can see almost a reddish tint to this tone here. Gold coins tend not to tone very much, but I have seen many examples of both the Spanish colonial pieces and these Mexican Republic pieces that really have beautiful tone. It's a little bit difficult to see here, but this is almost kind of a red colored tone, a very unusual. I have seen some of these pieces that have vibrant colors. I've seen some that have dark red toning, kind of like this one, except even more extravagant, more detailed than this. And I've seen some pieces that have kind of that dark brown, we call tobacco pouch toning. You don't see toning on a lot of American pieces of this age, but you can find it on these 8 Escudo pieces from New Spain and from Mexican Republic. So if you are a fan of toned gold, which is kind of a rare thing, this is one of those series where you can find affordable toned examples, and I would keep my eyes open for that as well. What do you think? 8 Escudo pieces, these great big historic solid gold cowboy or pirate treasure, they're a lot of fun. The premiums can be quite low if you spend your time Look for good examples. Look for examples that have been graded. Do you have 8 Escudos? Do you want 8 Escudos? Are you more of a fan of American pre-1933 gold if you're going to be buying pieces that were made to be circulated, these earlier pieces? Would you rather have those than the Spanish colonial or the Mexican Republic pieces? Obviously, I like them both, but I can definitely see the benefits to doing this. If you have questions about any of the pieces that we've talked about here today, by all means, leave a question down below and I'll try to answer it if I can. If you have suggestions or thoughts of a video or a series of videos that you'd like to see me make, leave that comment down below too. I'd like to entertain those ideas for possible future videos. And as always, and I mean this sincerely, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as you go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.